That day when Alex was murdered, I think the world woke up and saw what we were going through and saw the resistance. And all of a sudden, everyone was Minnesota. When I started my project, We Are Minnesota, I never even thought, and I wish it had not come to that, where the world was saying we are Minnesota because we were the epicenter of resistance.
Welcome to the new episode of Get the Picture podcast. I live in Minnesota, in the Twin Cities, and Minnesota has been in the center of the whirlwind this year, with the eyes of the world on us. When most people think of Minnesota, at least historically, they think of the movie Fargo, or they think of quirky, yeah, you betcha kind of accents, or tater tot hot dish and such. And people think of Minnesota, they think of mostly white people. Yes, there are lots of white people in Minnesota with their accents and their hot dish, but that was really never the whole story. Minnesota has large and continuing thriving indigenous communities, as well as longstanding Black, Chicano, and other communities as well. And even the white communities that we think of historically have nuanced histories, like the strong traditions of unions, co-ops, and socialist politics starting a century or so ago among Finns and other Northern European immigrants in northern Minnesota. But that said, Minnesota has also changed a lot over recent decades and become more culturally diverse. Most people who live here love and appreciate that. I know I do. Unfortunately, though, that has also caught the attention of anti-immigrant crusaders like President Trump, people who have demonized entire immigrant communities here and have caused immense havoc and trauma with people's lives with Operation Metro Surge. So in that context, I'm really excited that today's guest agreed to talk with me about her current photography project, We Are Minnesota, that she's creating in this historical moment and context. She's someone whose work I've followed and learned from for a while, but never reached out to talk directly. So when I took a shot in the dark to ask if she'd be willing to do this interview with my fairly new and, let's say, up-and-coming podcast, I was very pleasantly surprised she agreed to do it. So thank you and welcome to Get the Picture podcast.
Bonjour. Nice to be here.
So let's start with who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Yes, so I'm from France, and I'm known for my street photography, really, although I started as a commercial photographer, and about 15 years ago, I really specialized in street photography, so it's quite recent. I started photography quite late, and I've been running workshops ever since. So I quit my commercial photography business about 14 years ago, and I've been teaching workshops around the world since then, up to 15 a year, actually, before COVID. Now I'm spending a bit more time here and also traveling from me and doing about 8 to 10 workshops a year.
Wow. I definitely want to ask more about your workshops. I'm jealous of all the places that you go. But as you mentioned, you live in Minnesota here, which has been in the world spotlight this year. And we will talk more about Minnesota in depth in a little bit. But it caught my attention when I was looking through your recent workshops that you did one last year focused on capturing the soul of a place. So before we get into how you try to do that through your photography, I'm kind of just interested first in hearing your thoughts on what it's felt like for you being here in Minnesota over the past year and most intensively in the last few months. What's the story of Minnesota that you've seen and lived?
Well, it's been tough. I think it's been tough for everyone, not only in Minnesota, but around the world, because what's happening here is impacting the entire world. More so every minute of every day, it seems like. And so I right away, the day after the elections in 2024, so going back November, in order to channel my anger, I decided to start a new project. And at the time, I thought, okay, what do I want? What story do I want to say? And I always want to do a positive story. And at the time, I thought, okay, who are the people that are going to suffer the most from this change in the administration? I mean, we all knew what was going to happen. At least I feel like everybody should have known what was going to happen. So the two groups that right away were the immigrants around the country and the LGBTQ plus community. So in November that year, I started a project called One Love, featuring moments of daily life in the LGBTQ plus community mostly around Minnesota, but I also photographed in Mexico while I was there and California, but mostly locally. And it was a beautiful project. I met so many wonderful people, listened to so many amazing stories, made new friends. And usually I work on a project. I feel like after a year, I'm ready for something new. And actually a year exactly later, November 2025, I decided to start We Are Minnesota. And that project is obviously ongoing. So it started before the rest of the world really knew where Minnesota was, because it started in November and things really got ugly later in that year into January, February, and today. But it's an ongoing series celebrating the people who make our state strong, really. Because I've been here long enough to remember what Minnesota was like 30 years ago and how it has changed for the better, in my opinion, and to a much more vibrant and culturally diverse state and city, and it has become a much more exciting place to live. So I really wanted to photograph not only immigrants, but also Native Americans, and it's really about exploring the stories that shape Minnesota's cultural identity, and so that's how the project started. Exactly about 3 months ago now, 4 months.
And that's really the main reason I wanted to talk to you today was about this project and We Are Minnesota. I'd love to hear more about the previous project you did as well, focusing on LGBTQ people in Minnesota and elsewhere around the country. But let's stay on We Are Minnesota for now. When you meet with each person you photograph, you're asking them what makes Minnesota home for you.
Mm-hmm.
Have you been surprised by the answers?
Well, they've not really, although the answers have kind of changed. They've taken more political turn as the project evolved. You know, of course, the people that I photographed at the end of January were feeling a little different than the people I photographed in November. And actually, for a while, I had to pause because it was dangerous. Literally dangerous in the Twin Cities to meet with some of those people who have been sheltering in place now for months. But I'm surprised how many people wanted to participate, and I'm actually actively looking for more people. And 3 people reached out when I was out of town last week teaching in Oaxaca, Mexico. So word of mouth is starting to work. And the answers, of course, are different for each one, but I have photographed people who are from such different background. I mean, from Mexico to Serbia, so you can imagine how different the answers are. But it's been amazing, and again, it's highlighting what makes our state so strong. There's so many artists. And artists in many ways, because, I mean, some of our best chefs are immigrants. And I've had the privilege to photograph Chef Diane of my favorite restaurant, Diane's Place in Minneapolis, who is a Hmong chef. And it's just been amazing. Again, I moved here over 30 years ago, and it was hard to eat a good meal. Nobody should feel offended, but I'm not really keen on hot dish. So it was really hard to find good food. You couldn't even get a good cup of coffee back then in Minnesota, and things were pretty bland. And now we have this amazing community and art community that is unique in the country. Thanks for a big part to the immigrants.
Yes, absolutely. And I've had very much the same experience. The Twin Cities in my childhood, the dining options were lacking, to say the least. But anyway, so the portraits in this series include some well-known people like Cowley Herr, the mayor of St. Paul, for example, as well as a lot of people who aren't well-known. I do know at least one of them, Gustavo, who's a great local muralist. When I was going through, I was like, oh, I know him. But why did you decide to do a mix of some well-known people and some less well-known people as opposed to like all of one or the other?
Because it's whoever reached out to me or answered my calls, and I started with friends, and it went from there. So those are all personal projects that I do. I don't have anyone to please but me. I don't ask for grants or anything. I'm just doing it, from out of passion. And I love meeting people from all different backgrounds. And sometimes the people who are lesser known are easier to spend time with. They don't have the time constraints, or they're not as busy. But I was just blown away when Mayor Her actually met me. It was January 5th, and she was sworn in on the 3rd. And on the 5th, she met me for a good 15, 20 minutes. Of course, the picture only took 5 seconds, but we actually sat and talked, and it was lovely. And just to think that she gave me that time when, when she was just starting her position as the mayor of the capital city of Minnesota, I was blown away. She was lovely. But I also photographed Chef Sean Sherman, who only gave me, a few seconds in a busy restaurant. But, it doesn't matter. I'm a street photographer, so I know how to work quickly.
Yeah,
I don't need to take
quick.
I don't need to take 5 shots. And so, the project, it's not so much about the picture. Some of them I don't, feel like particularly great. But, it's all ambient light. I never know where I'm going to end up, if there's going to be good light, bad light. And it's more about the message.
Yeah, so I am interested to talk a little bit about the stylistic choices with the images. They're, at least so far, all in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
They're all done in different locations, as you talked about, some indoors, some outdoors. It's not like you sat everyone down in the same studio with the same backdrop and lighting. Why did you make those choices to do it that way?
Because black and white, because the lighting was going to be challenging, and I thought, okay, black and white, that's eliminates one problem, and then wherever people could meet me. That sometime it was their home, sometime we met at a museum, or at their place of business, in their restaurant. So keeping it simple, really keeping it simple, and the location says quite a bit about who they are as well. So I'm hoping as I keep doing this, that I will get some more exciting locations, as the weather gets better,
Yes.
do more outdoors, but we'll see. We'll see. Again, there's no plan. It's just it's authentic. It's complete improv. I love it. I don't prepare things, that just show up, and then we meet, we talk, I grab a few shots, and then, and often, if we have time, we talk some more, and then we keep in touch. It's a wonderful way not only to meet people, to highlight the beauty of our community here. And I'm so proud to live here. I'm so proud of Minnesotans. And, but it's also a form of resistance, and that can take so many different ways. You mentioned you photograph protests. I used to, actually. I don't photograph protests. I attend them. I don't photograph them, but I'm there. I like to talk with people. But this is another form of resistance, and there's so many ways, and I find that everyone can do something. We can attend protests, we can, especially as photographers, we can use our craft to work on project that's going to help or highlight, or whatever it is, a certain community, like I did with the LGBTQ plus community, and now with this project about immigrants. But everyone can do a little something. We can't change something big on our own, but we can certainly do little things that can make a big difference.
I'd like to follow up on just the general question of photography projects, because it's something that you've mentioned that you're always doing that. It's as a passion, not something that you're hired to do. And so you're not answerable to anyone except yourself with photography projects. So you seem to always have an intriguing project you're working on. Can you talk about why you think it's important for photographers to do projects like that? And I'll just mention too that a project that I've had going on that I started right before COVID hit, and then delayed and whatever, but I'm still working on it. I did actually a couple photos yesterday. Is a 100 Strangers project where I walk up to 100 people I don't know on the street and ask if I can do a quick portrait. And I did 2 of them yesterday, but I'm most of the way done. But anyway, that's been a great project for me to improve my portraiture, to get out of my bubble, to get out on the streets. But I also think it's important to do projects. Can you talk a little bit more about why you think it's important?
Well, for me, I travel so much. So when I'm not traveling, it's my way to get out with my camera, and keep working. Uh, I can't stop. I mean, I'm the happiest when I have my camera in my hand. And so, again, it's using my skills to tell stories. And as a street photographer, where I photograph strangers with no interactions whatsoever, I'm a fly on the wall, and I'm invisible as I walk the streets. And even though I photograph at 23 millimeter, people usually don't know I photograph them. That it's capturing a moment of someone's life, the beauty of everyday moments, in a 100% candid way. That working on projects, actually, since I'm an extrovert, working on project is my way to actually connect with people and photograph people while having a connection. So it's a completely different thing. It's totally out of my comfort zone to do portraits. I don't like portraits. I used to have a studio many years ago. I hated having a studio. And so portraits for me is something completely out of my comfort zone. And it's good. It's good to step outside of that comfort zone and try something new. So that was also a part of it. I prefer, like, the LGBTQ plus project, One Love, was candid moments of daily life, which was so much more to what I'm used to on the streets, except that people knew they were being photographed. Obviously, I met them in their homes or doing their passion or whatever it was at the park, working their dog. But it was more in my comfort zone. Here, this one is outside of it, but I'm having fun. And again, I don't need to impress anyone, and it's just for me. And it's usually those projects that will get the most visibility because they come from the heart. And if they come from the heart, they're done with passion. And I don't have plans for it. Just like, when I worked with the project 1 Century, where I photographed centenarians, mostly around the Twin Cities as well, which was a project I did 2.5 years ago, doing the activities that bring them joy. I did not know it would become a solo show on a book. It just started as a project to do during the winter month while I was not traveling, and it ended up being a pretty big deal. Yeah, it's good. It makes people feel good. I think that's one thing too. Every person I have photographed for any of those 3 recent projects, it was often the highlight of their days. And so if they're happy, it makes me happy, and it's a feel good thing that we so need right now. Yeah. Plus, here is really it's about awareness. It's really about awareness. And this one, I think, may be the most important one in this time.
Yeah, I think it's very striking and powerful personally. But can you talk, maybe you've mentioned it a few times now, your One Love project, maybe say a little bit more about that?
Yes. So that was I can't remember right now how many people I photographed. It must have been nearly 15 or 20 families or couples or individuals. It was really, it was also a black and white project capturing moments of everyday life among the LGBTQ plus community. And it was wonderful. I mean, I started it, as I said, in November 2024, immediately after the result of the elections, and when people were in a state of shock, and things were were going to change quickly, and everybody in the community was affected. And so, and again, that project really, I made so many friends through that project. People that I see today, actually people who were in both projects now. In the One Love project, the first people I photographed for One Love are also in We Are Minnesota. So,
Oh, that's so cool.
yeah, so you never know. You never know. It's been good.
So thank you for all of that, going into detail about the different projects that you've been working on. I want to shift gears a little bit to talk about street photography a little more generally. And since we're both in the Twin Cities, I'm just kind of curious if you'll share a little bit about your approach to street photography here in the Twin Cities and why. And I ask because it's different here than, say, New York City or a lot of Latin American or European cities, where there's much more of kind of a center to cities, and there's much more of a culture of people hanging out outside at cafes or just walking around. And there's really no center to Minneapolis or St. Paul through decades of really, in my opinion, poor urban planning. And there's really not a lot of obvious places where you can just go outside and see lots of people and hanging out outside. To me, I think that kind of forces you to be a little more thoughtful or creative with street photography here locally. And I'm just curious about your thoughts on that and your approach to street photography in the Twin Cities.
Yeah, I think people think that street photography is something they do when they travel more than at home. But I always say, don't forget that your home is a vacation destination for someone else, right? So there is always potential. You don't. I mean, and we're lucky. We have a big urban area. You can do this in a village. So I find that there is always a story to tell. And yes, we do have places where there are a lot of people, not so much the business center, the downtown area, which is actually never really quite recovered. But look at the Mill City area. I was just there yesterday, and their Stone Arch Bridge was filled with people.
Yeah, it's one of the few places I love going there. Yeah,
and the North Loop and the lake. So there are so many places, especially around Minneapolis, but everywhere. And again, street photography doesn't really requires a street. It requires people. And I've done a lot of my work and my projects on frozen lakes or near water. There are stories everywhere. So people often think street photography and they think street. Well, the street is not mandatory. The people are. If you just photograph a street, it's not street photography. It's urban photography. It's about photographing the human element in everyday moment, and that happens everywhere.
You use the term contemplative photography, and you even have a book about that. And in the description I was looking at for the book, it talks about it means to learn and see with your heart and connect with your surroundings on a more authentic level. I'd love to hear you just talk about that a little bit, and maybe as a teaser to encourage people to buy your book.
Thank you. I'm actually teaching a new class on that with an assignment class online. So it's really about seeing with your heart, and that has nothing to do with street photography. That's something completely different that I do, that I think often people do without even knowing what it is. I like to refer to it as contemplative photography because it's really photographing, again, things that can be so mundane that people would not even think of pointing the camera towards, but that in a certain light or because of colors or shadows will just look so amazing. And it's our job as visual artists to make anything mundane be worthy of a photograph. And so I teach that during workshops around the world as well, as a combination with street photography, because I really think that they go together in telling the story of a place. It's not about photographing an iconic landmark when you travel. It's more about those little details of everyday life, including people shots, and then those little vignette shots of mundane little things that really tell the story and that really tell the soul of a place, really.
You did a project at the Minnesota State Fair, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that really, in a lot of ways, is an iconic cultural experience of Minnesota. Can you talk about that project a little bit?
Yeah, that's still ongoing, called State Fair Moments, which will be an exhibit and a book. That was supposed to be last year, and the gallery lost its some of its funding. So a lot of things got canceled last year already. So yeah, that's everyday moments at the fair. I'm not a crowd person. I'm quite a minimalist photographer. I don't do a lot of busy scenes. So it's and of course the fair, and, it's probably the busiest place you can
Yes.
think of, right? And so, in order for me to actually be able to spend time at the fair, was to work on this project and capture the intimate moments of the fair throughout, whether I'm in the barn or at the midway where the rides are, and capturing those moments again of everyday life, completely candid, and whether it's a moment of joy or somebody taking a snooze, and sleeping with their animal in the barn. It's capturing those moments that if you slow down in a busy place like the state fair, you will see those moments. And I think for most people, it's more like a blur. And so this project has I used to not like the state fair. Coming from a different country, I did not really understand it. I don't like fair food. I mean, I'll spend a whole day at the fair. I won't even eat food there. I don't like fair food, and but to me, it seemed like people were going to the fair just for the food, and I'm like, but why? It's disgusting. And so I did not get it for a long time. I didn't want to go, and now I go at least every other day, but for a short time. So I rarely spend more than 2 hours. I can't take much more than that in that type of crowd. But then I focus in one area. It's getting more and more difficult because I feel like I know where the shots are now. So to get something that I haven't seen before is getting more and more difficult. So I feel like the project, no matter what, it's coming to an end. But it's people love this project. I mean, people who've never seen the fair and see this project, people from overseas that see this project, they all want to come and experience it. So I've been a good ambassador for the fair.
I love that. Yeah, and it is, for people who aren't in
So
Minnesota
unique.
or aren't familiar with it, it is one of the largest state fairs in the country.
Yeah.
I think I've heard some people say Texas is bigger, but anyway, it's quite the happening in Minnesota, and all kinds of stuff going on, and every food you could want on a stick. It's yeah. So you've talked about workshops that you do. Could you talk a little bit more about what those are when you do workshops in a city? Like you just talked about doing one in Oaxaca, Mexico. What is that, and what happens there?
So, yes, I teach workshops mostly. Well, normally I teach in the U.S. as well. This year I have no U.S. workshops. That was more of a statement. And so my workshops are in Europe for the most part. And I was just in Mexico. I teach a workshop in either Mexico City or Oaxaca every February. And so it's mostly, again, it's street photography. It's visual narratives. We experienced so many wonderful things in Oaxaca. We went into the mountains and spent the day with a mezcal place where they actually cook the agave, cut the agave, cook it, and the whole process in the most authentic way where no one ever goes. It's not a touristy place. They've been doing it for generations without electricity or running water. It's as authentic as it can get. And we spend the day with the workers and photographing them and eating with them. And it was wonderful. So then my students were able to really tell a visual narrative of that day. And so capturing all the shots they need, the big picture, the medium shots, and all those little close-up shots that will tie their story together. So we worked on that in many different places, some of the biggest markets in the country. We visited a pottery studio. So we worked on those visual narratives. The workshops in Europe are more pure street photography, where we capture beautiful moments of daily life in single frames, and teaching people how to work quickly and efficiently at capturing that fraction of a second that's never happened before and will never happen again, and whether it's in Paris or Prague or wherever.
So you organize this workshop in a country, in a city, and the people that attend it are they like brand new beginner photographers? Do they have to already be great street photographers? And how does
All
that work?
levels. All levels, because it's about teaching them to see. They should all know how to use their gear. It doesn't matter what they shoot with. Some people have been photographers much longer than I have. They still have a lot to learn. A lot of people are so into their settings that they forget to see.
To look,
And
yeah.
and some really new photographers, because the gear doesn't get in the way, they can see better quicker. So it doesn't matter the level, and everybody always have something to learn and improve on, and it's also the camaraderie of a workshop. I have a lot of repeat customers, so on every workshops I have people who've met on my workshop. They come again and travel together, and they come to new destinations every year. So it's the camaraderie that's also a big part of it, and learning from each other and having a good time, for whether it's a weekend or a week, and living and breathing photography for that time, without anyone telling you, "Are you done yet? Can we go?" You know how it is.
When you travel with your family,
Yeah.
they're, oh, come
So
on.
yeah.
So you made reference. I really like the way you're talking about gear potentially even getting in the way of actually seeing. But that said, people are interested in what gear people use, and what do you usually use when you're doing street photography, and what would you recommend for someone just starting out?
Yeah, so again, there are no bad cameras, just bad photographers. Just find something that works for you. It has to feel right in your hand. You have to forget it is actually in your hand, and it has to become an extension of your vision. That's when you know you have a good camera. I've been shooting with the same camera for 12 years now, the X100 series. Of course, it's a new one, where now I'm now shooting with the X106, but it's the same camera. I don't need to look at it to know where my dials are. And to me, that's a good camera. So I'll keep shooting with that as long as they make it. And so I don't like changing cameras, although I'm an ambassador for Fujifilm and I could use any camera I want. I, I like this one. I need two of the same camera, because, I travel a lot and I always need a backup. But that's it. That's all I need. 23 millimeter. But use your phone. I mean, unfortunately, it's sad, but it's the future of photography. And it's really about learning to see. So it doesn't matter what you use, really. Use an old camera. A lot of people are going back to film, and that's wonderful as well. So
Yes.
in every workshop, it seems like there is one person who's shooting film. So film is not dead. I don't see DSLRs anymore really on workshops. It's mostly smaller, more
Mirrorless.
inconspicuous cameras that are better than the big cameras we used to shoot with.
So one thing I'm curious about is when I was trying to make the leap from doing photography as a hobby, as a passion, to doing it as my part-time job and having a part-time job or doing it full-time, my main passions at that time were street photography, landscapes. I would do pictures at protests and then at concerts, live music photography. And the conventional wisdom is that none of those are really an easy way to make a living. And you got to do weddings, or you got to do commercial, or you got to do like real estate where you shoot 5 different places a day or something. But you seem to be able to, and I'm not sure if you're making a living off of just doing what you do, but it seems like you're an example that shows it might be possible to make a living focused on street photography.
Yeah, I mean, if you teach, it's about the only way. Obviously, I mean, people do buy my work. There are collectors that have been actually just yesterday, I sold a print for a permanent collection in Germany, which I mean, they reached out to me and they wanted a specific print for their collection, so I was quite pleased. But most people don't even understand street photography, so it's not really a hot ticket item. People don't
Yeah.
people buy street photography for the name of the photographer mostly. And so it's not the way you're going to make a living out of photography by selling prints. I can guarantee that. However, teaching, but that is also very saturated, and a lot of people are trying to teach. However, no one does it like you. And I don't feel like we're competing in that field because people come from all over the world to come on a workshop. For example, my Paris workshop last summer, I had 10 photographers from 8 countries, 4 continents, and no one French at that workshop. So people come from all over the world for a week or a weekend of pure photography joy, and then the more diverse the group is, the most fun it is too, because you have someone who is from New Zealand hanging out with someone from Spain, and we all have that common love. And so for me, it's just wonderful. I mean, I can now say that I've made my best friends through those workshops in the past 14, 15 years. And now I wish I had started sooner. It's a good way to make a living by teaching, but you can certainly teach in your own city. I didn't start by teaching a workshop in Australia. Obviously, I'm French. I started by teaching in France. That made the most sense, right?
Hmm.
So if you know the community in Minneapolis, well then start with a 1-day workshop in Minneapolis. Don't start with a full week like I did. My first workshop was actually a full week,
Wow.
all-inclusive workshop in Paris. I made my life so difficult.
Oh my God. Yeah.
But from that year, with one workshop, I taught 9 the following year, all the way to Australia. So it's a word of mouth business. Uh, it's really a word of mouth business. People go on a lot of workshops, and you hear what's happening in everybody else's workshop, because the people who come on my workshop, they've been on many other workshops, and
Okay.
so you hear all the stories. Everybody knows everybody, and so it's kind of fun. Yeah,
Great. So yeah, and I've thought about that, and just because of being busy, I haven't done that here in Minneapolis. Like, I know you can even on Airbnb create an
it's
experience of
true.
like a photography tour of downtown Minneapolis for whatever you're going to charge, and walk with people to by the Bob Dylan mural and First Avenue and whatever they want to take pictures. Um, I've thought about doing it. I never have. So, but I definitely agree
It's a
with
good
your
idea.
thought. Yeah, that start where you are and
Exactly.
build out from there.
Yeah, I mean, it has to make sense. You cannot sell, again, my first workshop, people didn't know who I was. I was not even on Instagram yet. I was barely doing any social media. I got my name out there by writing a lot of articles and about photography and build an audience that way. Now it's easier to build an audience, I find, today than it was 15 years ago. But you have to start with what you know and what makes sense for people. People are not going to follow you to Paris when you're here. It just doesn't make sense. You'll be able to do that later, where people will follow you everywhere. And now I'm in a position where I go wherever I want to go, and I have my list of cities I want to teach in or I want to visit. I go there, and people will come. But you're not going to start that way. And I know people who have tried that. They were, from New Zealand and wanted to teach their first workshop in London, and it didn't sell because it didn't make sense. If you're going to be in London, you're going to want to learn with someone who lives there. If you don't know the photographer, at least they know the place, so it makes more sense. So I think the approach of doing even experiences, even if they're 3-hour experiences, start easy and then build from there. I think that's a great idea.
learn from your negative experience of starting with a full week all inclusive. Don't do that as your first thing.
No,
Though it worked out for you, so
it worked out, but man, it was hard.
I bet. So other than the We Are Minnesota project, are there any other things that you're currently working on or have up and coming that you'd like to let people know about?
No, no exhibit this year. I'm kind of taking it easy. I think we're all so exhausted. And
Yes.
we're just, and what is it, March? Ugh, and we're all so exhausted by the daily news, even though I don't even watch any TV. I try to get my news from reliable sources, but it's hard. It's exhausting. So I'm going to teach next month. I'm off to Prague. But every time I go to Europe, I spend some time back home in Normandy in France. And so spending time with family and friends and really trying to keep our try to keep what's happening from not destroying our mental health since it's destroying everything else. I think that's kind of our goal right now. And being able to travel and be removed from it for a while is really good for me, especially since I'm not from here. And I'm like, oh, it's just good to be home and feel free. And I was actually there in January when everything was happening in Minneapolis. So I was here in the Twin Cities when Renee Good was murdered. And then I went to teach a workshop in Paris and spent some time back home. And I was gone for 2 weeks. And that Saturday when Alex was murdered, I was in Paris. And my friends texted me and said, "Oh, you're lucky you're not here right now." And I said, "Oh, don't think that. I can't wait to go home and I want to be on the streets with everybody else." When something really awful happens, you want to be there. You want to be with your people.
Yes.
And I went back like 3 days later and I was at the protests and immediately and it felt good to be with the community again. And that day, that Saturday, everything was happening at the same time. There was Greenland was was big on the news during that week. And I got a text from one of my good friends in Denmark. And that Saturday, and he said, "We're not talking about Greenland today. We're talking about Minneapolis." And it's that day that the world knew, because I don't think people were really aware what was happening in the country. My experience traveling so much in 2025, I was telling people what was happening. People were just being taken away and deported or sent to camps, and people didn't really believe it. They didn't see that on the news. And that day when Alex was murdered, I think the world woke up and saw what we were going through and saw the resistance.
Yes.
And all of a sudden everyone was Minnesota. When I started my project, We Are Minnesota, I never even thought, and I wish it had not come to that, where the world was saying we are Minnesota because we were the epicenter of resistance. So I just wanted to be back here. And it's rare for me to say that because, I love being at home in France. It's like I have 2 homes and it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to have 2 homes because you feel a little torn. But to be in Paris and wishing I was in Minnesota, it actually doesn't happen very often. But that day, I was teaching. I could have jumped on a plane that day. That's how much I wanted to be back here with the community. So it was something that I had never really felt before.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I've also traveled internationally, quite a bit, and in the past. Where people ask where you're from, and from the United States. Where? Minnesota.
You get that
Most
point.
people didn't know if they knew anything. It was if they were they knew Prince, maybe the musician, or when Kevin Garnett was a big basketball player, people who were into sports knew the name Kevin Garnett, but didn't really register that that's Minnesota. Now we're in a different situation. People know Minnesota.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, I mean, you see, there were flags, Minnesota flags,
yes.
around the world. And I was so glad that we had this new flag that was easily recognizable, and people were flying it so proudly around the world as a sign of resistance, and I thought that was just beautiful.
Yeah, I love that you used that on the promotion for your project. And I actually wrote something on social media not that long ago about the new flag, just sort of thinking back. This was just like 2 years ago or so that it was adopted amidst a lot of controversy about it. And I think it's proven in practice now that it was an excellent choice for a flag because it's, like you said, immediately recognizable. It's simple. People take it up and turn it into also other things like I'm sure you've seen the Rebel Loon symbol that is, people have signs with it at all the protests, stickers, buttons, tattoos. Thousands of people have gotten that tattooed. So yeah, it's a powerful symbol, I think.
Absolutely.
So where can people find this project, We Are Minnesota, and your other work if they want to buy one of your books or find out about your workshops?
Yeah, so on my website, Valérie Jardin, VALERIEJARDIN.com. And I'm on Instagram, same name. So I'm pretty easy to find. If you Google my name, I'll pop up pretty quickly. So the project is ongoing. If you know anyone who would like to participate, I would love to meet with them. I don't know how long this project will go for. I was thinking it would be, I kind of wonder now that I've met people from, there is a big community from Nepal, for example. I didn't know that. Who knew? So many people from, I mean, we know there's a large Mexican community, Somali community, but there's so many countries that we can't even, find on the map. There's just countries that, you barely ever heard about, and they are in Minnesota. And so I think it would be actually so nice to have at least 50 different cultures represented in the project. Of course, a lot of them will cross over many times, and I've photographed already several Mexican Americans or Hmong people. But it'd be really looking forward to hearing from people from countries that I would not even have thought about. So, because I'm pretty sure that every country in the world is represented here. What do you think?
I would bet you're right.
Yeah.
Maybe there's one or two that
Maybe,
there's nobody, but yeah, I mean,
yeah,
you meet people from lots of different places and also minority groups within countries that, are here because of being persecuted in their country, as a minority. So yeah, like within the Somali community, for example, it's not uniform. There's different groupings within that or within, different Southeast Asian countries. So yeah, 50 sounds like a great number.
Yeah, I'll start with that.
Well, Valérie, thank you so much for sharing your time and your insights about what's happening in Minnesota and how you've perceived and experienced it and your photographic work in relation to that. I think it's really important and encourage anyone listening to check out the One Love and We Are Minnesota projects as well as her other projects. And if you've listened this far, then please like and subscribe and leave a 5-star rating and comment and do all the things to promote people listening to this podcast. And please consider supporting Get the Picture with a small amount on Patreon so this labor of love can continue and grow. Thank you.
Thank you.